I really appreciate you joining me, Amanda. I'm a big fan of your work, and I wanted to show off to everybody. I learned about your work in the summer
Oh, yeah.
around Black Lives Matter, and you helped put together this beautiful art is a tool. I think it looks backwards in our camera right now, but just love it. And I love with your calligraphy that, it's both an art, but I feel like calligraphy reminds me in some ways of pottery. It's got this function of the communication, and all art can communicate really powerfully. But the written word is just this one extra punch to the heart, and just both speaking from the heart and helping to communicate ideas really powerfully.
I agree. I think that a lot of people will view calligraphy as just pretty letters, but we can use those pretty letters to really send a positive message, to express ourselves. So there's a lot that really comes with it.
I have to say too, I'm a painter more and a sketcher, and I'd say my handwriting can be beautiful, but it's a scrawl. And I have this ambition to learn and practice calligraphy. And I think I need to accept to be a beginner. I need to be a beginner at it. And I also just think that when I saw your brushwork, your use of brushes in calligraphy, it sort of clicked something for me, because I've sort of always associated pens more with the script English calligraphy versus say Japanese.
Right. Yeah. So you can totally use watercolor brushes. That's actually, my first introduction into calligraphy was with brush lettering, with brush pens, but also a paintbrush. And I've been painting for longer than I've been doing calligraphy. And so I naturally gravitate towards a watercolor or a paintbrush for lettering, as opposed to a pen or a marker. So that's where my roots are in painting. So
well, I was wondering if you might share a little bit more of your background, of how you came into calligraphy and brush lettering, and then maybe we can switch shortly to our overhead view, and you might share some of your favorite materials.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so I've been painting for a while, for over 10 years now. But I got into calligraphy and brush lettering about 5 years ago in grad school. Outside of calligraphy and lettering, I'm a physical therapist. And so while I was in school for that, I took some brush lettering classes and calligraphy workshops. One, for a creative outlet, but two, I was getting married soon, and I wanted to be able to do the calligraphy for my own wedding. So I had to learn how to do it.
Nothing like a deadline.
So I took some classes and workshops, and I really just fell in love with it. And I just have been practicing over the years. So yeah, now I've had the opportunity to work with different brands for weddings and events, and do jackets and banners, and it's just kind of blown up from there.
That's awesome. Congratulations. Yeah, I saw on your Instagram you have a new notebook series that has recently launched. And
yes, with Erin Condren, they collaborated to kind of highlight more Black artists, and so they have a new series out featuring a design that I created along with some other amazing artists.
Well, I love it. I love all your uplifting messages too. They're really inspiring. we all need it right now, especially.
For sure. Definitely now.
Yeah. Well, would you want to share with us some of your favorite sort of tools and supplies that you use in getting started?
Yes, I do. I can share, I'll share Face On just so you can kind of see what I'm working with. So first, I like to talk about the brushes, since we're doing watercolor.
Mm-hmm.
So the brushes that I use with lettering are round brushes, and I've got two different sizes here. They're not anything fancy. These are the brushes that I use in my beginner workshops.
Mm-hmm.
So I tell people the smaller the number, the smaller the writing that you'll be able to do. So this is a brush.
Can you say that number again? I just missed you.
It's a size 1.
A size 1?
And then this other one is a little bit bigger. It's a size 6.
Okay.
Okay. And I tell people when they're looking at their brushes, just to be mindful of the tip. You want to have like a nice pointed round, as opposed to this brush is a little bit more frayed.
Mm-hmm.
Days. So try to be mindful of the brushes that you choose. For paper, when I'm just practicing, I'll just use like a basic marker paper. It's got
Mm-hmm.
a smooth surface. It's great for practicing or tracing any practice guides that you might have. But for final projects, I'll use watercolor paper. It's a little bit thicker. This has more texture and it absorbs the water and the colors really well. If you want a smoother paper, then you can get like a hot press watercolor paper.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the brushes and the paper. For the watercolor, today I'm going to use your palette that you sent me. It's so cute. You can take this anywhere. So you can use this. But really, I tell people that, you can pick up watercolors from anywhere, really use any brand, just find something that works best for you and
Yeah.
within your budget. Obviously, the cheaper or more affordable it is, it won't, have as dense colors. So just be mindful of that. Sometimes
Yeah.
you pay for it.
Absolutely.
And then the other thing is, of course, a little cup of water. And I like to also use a little pipette.
Oh.
Sometimes I'll use this to squeeze the water onto my palette. Some people will use like a little squirt bottle to just spray the colors and get all the colors wet. But
Yeah.
you also just use your brush. So,
I
and then
just saw, oh, sorry to interrupt you. I was going to say, I see a question about too with brushes, if you ever use some sable brushes or if you have any hairs you prefer.
I have not used sable brushes. I'm one of those people that I'm really not picky about the
Mm-hmm.
tattoos. So I haven't really dived into that avenue quite yet. But the one that I'm using this is just a really, I don't want to call it a cheap brand, but it's like you can get it from Hobby Lobby or Michael's. Because
Mm-hmm.
in my workshops, because usually when people are first learning, they don't know anything about brushes. So I try to keep it really simple and minimal for them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a balance between being really accessible and then, sort of putting your money where the supplies that'll
Right.
really last. And
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
When people get more into lettering with watercolor or whatever medium they prefer, then they start to learn like which tools they like the best, and we'll kind of dive in and
Yeah.
invest.
I was going to ask you, I thought today I pulled out a couple of the brushes and tools we sell just to maybe experiment with. And I told you before our demo too, I've been a little nervous because I'm such a newbie to calligraphy. So I'm coming with a real open mind. But I thought I might play with one of our travel brushes a little bit, just
Ooh.
doing some of our exercises. I don't know if you've had experience with them.
Yeah, I actually have one of those. It's around here somewhere. I just brought a whole bunch of watercolor stuff with me. The aqua brushes, I love them because you can just put the water in the brush and kind of squeeze the water out as you go. So that
Mm-hmm.
just as well. So I've got
And a couple, oh, there it is. And a couple other things we have is we have a brush pen that I've done more brush sketching with, but I thought again, I might just pull out and fiddle with what we cover. And then it's a little bit bigger than yours, but this is one of our Rosemary travel brushes, the R13 that comes to a real point. So anyhow, we'll see how they all work.
yeah. And the beautiful thing about brush lettering is it works with all of those tools that you just showed, because the fibers all kind of resemble each other and as far as like shape and structure. So
Mhm.
it'll be any of the tools that you have.
Yeah, yeah. Well, should we move over to our desks? And you mentioned you've got kind of some warm-ups you like to do, and
Yeah. Yeah, I figured what we'll do is we'll go through some basic strokes, And then I'll kind of demonstrate how to use those strokes to create letter shapes. And then we can kind of finish off with a quote.
Awesome. Oh, I'm excited.
It's going to be good. All right, let's switch the camera around.
All right. Just do a quick little switcheroo.
All right. And I'm going to try to make sure I stay within the frame. I've got a clipboard here. So
all right.
if you can't see what I'm doing, just holler at me and I'll adjust my camera.
Awesome. Will do.
Okay, so I'll use my bigger brush, the size 6, since that's kind of similar to what you have. But when it comes to brush lettering, there's really basic strokes that you can do just to kind of warm your hands up. And so we'll go through those.
Do you often do warm-ups before like any project? Is this something you sort of practice regularly, or when you're like getting to do a new brush, or more something you recommend for beginners to kind of go through?
Yes, I highly recommend, especially beginners, to get used to practicing basic strokes because that will help you really develop some good muscle memory for creating steady lines, transitioning between upstrokes and downstrokes. And so those are the basic strokes that we're going to go through today that I practice regularly in all my workshops, and even before I just kind of sit and play with my my tools and watercolors.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I'm going to get some water on my brush and get some colors wet here. I'm going to do blue. It's a pretty color. Right, so first I'm going to get make sure I have enough pigment on my brush. So when we're doing lettering, the main strokes that you should worry about as a beginner is anytime your hand moves up the page, it's going to be a thin, light upstroke. And anytime your hand moves down the page, it's going to be a thick, heavy stroke. And I'll show what that looks like. So a thin, light upstroke is just starting from the bottom and a nice little line there. And you're really only using the tip of your brush. So very thin and light. And a lot of people say that they get really squiggly lines.
Yeah. So are you putting your hand on the paper too, or elevating it and like moving from your shoulder?
So yes, I'm moving more from my shoulder. I have a very light hand on the paper so that, it can really glide. And most of the movement is coming from my whole arm in order for my lines to be a little bit more straight.
Oh, look how even yours are. Uh-huh.
So yeah, just some thin, light upstrokes. Anytime your hand moves up the page, it's going to be thin and light going up the page, just using the tip of your brush. Okay. And so then the opposite, when we do our downstrokes, for this one, you want to see the brush bend on the page. So you're going to start from the top and you're going to put more pressure and you're going to drag your brush down the page. That's a really heavy downstroke, but you want to create a thick downstroke.
Oh, that one feels easier to me.
Yeah, that one's much easier to do than the upstroke. The upstroke requires a little bit more control.
And in practicing these exercises, like I notice your spacing is pretty consistent and your line, height and such is consistent. Is that something you're striving for?
Yeah, that also comes with time. Usually, when I teach beginner classes, it will include like a little beginner's kit that has like some guidelines so that people can get used to like spacing. And we'll see this as we, are lettering here in a second. But a struggle that a lot of new calligraphers have, or new people that are getting into lettering, is the consistency of their spacing. So using guidelines, or you can even use a pencil to
Mm-hmm.
draw like your baseline, and then, you know, a line on top just to keep things kind of consistent. But for now, we'll just focus on getting the handle on how to make these strokes.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, that does come with time. All right, so our next stroke that we'll do, because all of our letters are not straight up and down, right?
Yeah.
We'll practice some transition lines. So the first one is going from a thin upstroke to a thick, heavy downstroke. So like an upside down U.
Beautiful.
So thin, light pressure going up using just the tip of your brush, and then a heavy, thick downstroke coming down.
And you take your time with these. I see you're not rushing. Do you think about breathing as you are doing your lines?
Yes, and you know, it's funny. I actually did not consider breathing until maybe a couple weeks ago. There's a very famous calligrapher, Paul Antonio. He did a live demonstration with our group, Calligraphers of Color, and he was
Mm-hmm.
kind of emphasizing the importance of breathing as you do these exercises. But I am very intentional, and I, you know, stress the importance of going slow when you're practicing, because if you just rush through your lettering, then you're not giving the ink and the color enough time to really transfer from the brush onto the paper. And you want to really develop that muscle memory, and by rushing through it, it doesn't really allow you to do that.
Seems really meditative.
It is. I say all the time, calligraphy is self-care. It's very therapeutic. And someone asked, what about left-handed people? So you can do I'm not left-handed, but for lefties, I think the biggest tip is you're probably going to have to angle your paper in a certain direction, because the struggle for your lefties is, you know, smearing your hand through everything that you just wrote.
Yeah.
So being able to angle your paper at the, you know, the right angle really helps. Let's see. Sarah said, for left-handers, you write down the page instead of up the page. So that's a little tip for lefties. All right, let's practice another basic stroke. We're just going to do the opposite of what we just did. So we're going to start with a heavy downstroke and then come up with thin, light pressure. So just like a U. Thick going down, thin coming up.
You make it look easy, Amanda.
I've had a little bit of practice, you know, just a little.
I always tell my students, practice, not perfection.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. When I teach classes, I usually will tell them I have 3 rules. And the first rule is you're not allowed to be frustrated, because you're learning a new skill. It takes time to really develop like a good hand and steadiness. And the more you practice, the more efficient you'll become and the easier it will get. But in the meantime, you get to struggle a little bit.
All right.
Okay. All right. Your strokes are looking pretty good.
Oh, thank you. I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
it looks
I just
good.
thought I'd test out another brush just for fun.
Okay. Yeah, they look great. And Sarah is giving some really good tips. She has a course right now for copperplate calligraphy. And so she's got some good little tips that she's adding in the chat right now. All right. So one more stroke we can practice. I'm trying to keep these pretty simple so we have time and Instagram won't cut us off. So this one is more of an O shape. So you're going to come down at an angle with your brush. And then when you get to the bottom, you're lifting your pen up off the page so that just the tip remains as you come up for a thin light stroke.
Awesome. And I just switched the brush. I was using the R13 rosemary brush, which has this very long, beautiful tip. And it's a number 8 round. And now I'm using a medium Pentel water brush. And zero experience calligraphy here. It's funny though, Amanda, for me to say that, because I did, one of my mentors when I was young and getting into art was a Japanese brush maker friend of mine. So I used to practice some sumi calligraphy. And I remember like practicing leaf shapes over and over and practicing some basic Japanese characters many, many years ago.
Yeah.
But I never sort of translated it to letters, and this is inspiration.
Oh yeah, for sure. All right. How do you feel about trying some letters now?
Okay, I'm feeling up for it.
Okay.
I think I'll need a new sheet of paper here. I'm just gonna give this one a little tear off.
Okay.
Okay, actual letters.
Actual letters. We're going for it. And I will grab a fresh sheet as well, just in case I run out of space.
All right, you inspired me. I'm going to mix a little,
as
I'm just playing with a little Daniel Smith palette. I put together kind of a minimal one. So I've been using a graphite watercolor, and you inspired me. I'm going to mix a little blue into it. I do love blue.
Ooh, okay.
Let's see. Okay, being adventurous.
Switch it up a little bit. I'm going to switch up my colors too. I'm going to use this maroon color.
Quinacridone rose. That's nice and bright.
All right. So when we're doing our letters, again, as you're writing, remember these main rules of anytime your hand moves up the page, it's going to be that thin light stroke. And anytime your hand moves down the page, it's going to be a thick, heavy stroke. So we're learning more of a modern calligraphy today. There are some other styles of calligraphy or scripts that are very structured and have a lot more rules. And this has a little bit more, liberty with it, but there's still some structure involved. So if I'm doing the letter A, I am going to move up with my brush, a thin light stroke, down thick heavy stroke, up light, and then down thick, up light.
All right. I think that might just be my one big takeaway from you today is the thick and thin.
Yes.
Just feels like it demystifies a bit sort of what to do with your, and choosing how the letters are made.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And it depends on really the style of calligraphy that you're doing. But if you're just doing like an introduction, you're just getting started, however you write in cursive, just apply these basic rules of thin upstroke, thick downstroke to whatever letters you're creating. So I'm going to do a B. This one's going to be a little fancy. I'm going to come up thin, and it's kind of got a little S curve there. Down thick for my stem, up thin, down thick, and then kind of back around. Nice.
Yeah.
I was watching you. Yeah.
I'll just need you in my head anytime I'm doing lettering.
Yeah. So same thing for the C. Here's a little tail kind of going into the letter, but up thin, down thick, and then up thin.
So do you feel like as a calligrapher, you have sort of your different fonts, like kind of different scripts in terms of like that you do, whether more with a flourish or like a simpler, I'm thinking about like, um, just with more of a cursive or a sans
Yeah.
serif, just straight, with
Yeah.
your
So
practice.
exactly. So each calligrapher really has their own style. Um, we refer to it as like our style of calligraphy. And again, like with modern calligraphy, you'll see a ton of different ways that, different people will create their own letters. Um, and so some people tend to be a little bit more simple and keep it pretty straight. And then some people are really into flourishing. So I did like an example is this D here is a, pretty simple D. But sometimes if I want to really elevate it, I will kind of add in a little extra
Mm-hmm.
um, some little extra loops in there to kind of elevate it a little bit. And so you can really adjust the style of your lettering. And you'll notice it more as we put the letters together to create words. But you can adjust the angle of your letters to be more slanted. You can make your letters more bouncy. So, as you practice, I encourage people to just kind of stick to basics to just get familiar with, applying the upstrokes and downstrokes and using the tools. But as you experiment more, you'll start to develop how you like to write your letters and you really develop your own signature style.
Were you inspired by some other calligraphers and finding yours?
Oh, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd say when I first started about 5 years ago, I wasn't really on Instagram that much as far as like following other, calligraphers. I was just taking the classes and doing what I was taught in the workshops. But once I started my business, then I was like, oh, there's other calligraphy businesses out here. Let me follow some more people. And so I have a few people that I've kind of like, I don't like to copy other calligraphers because, everyone, has their own style and is unique, and you don't want to copy too much off of anyone's, their unique style. But I do like styles that tend to be a little bit more elevated and classy. Um, so that's kind of the look that I try to go for.
And I see you do things like, script on the backs of jackets for people. And really, I feel like your work is readable and beautiful.
Yeah, yes. I try to make it legible, especially when you're doing work for clients. You want them to be able to read what you wrote. So I try to keep it simple, but still look, nice and classy if it's like for a wedding or something like that. But I really enjoy, and I'm going to get a new sheet of paper here. I really enjoy applying calligraphy and lettering to non-traditional surfaces. So, most of the time people think of like wedding invitations or customized gift tags and things like that. But like you said, I do like to write on jackets. I've written on banners, wood signs. Um, I do engraving on bottles, calligraphy on acrylic panels. There's so many things that you can really use this calligraphy and lettering that'll translate over to different surfaces.
Oh, so it's okay to like go back and modify your strokes a little bit too.
Oh yeah, yeah, yes. If you have a stroke that you're like, oh, that's not very cute, you can always go back with your brush. And as long as, as long as the watercolor is still wet, you can always play with it and modify it. Um, and so let's see. Let's do an L. I like doing L's. So with this L, if I, want to do something fun, I can add a little bit more water to it. And if I really want to be fun, I can even add in some more colors and kind of
A little
do
wet
like
and wet.
ombre. Yeah. A little wet on wet technique.
Yeah, I
Give it
know that.
um Yeah, so you can, kind of add in a little color to your letters, make it fun. Sometimes I really like, there's some calligraphers who are really into, they do a lot of demos on their page, and I can't think of any names right now, but they'll start off with just, and I'm going to try to do this here, they'll just write the letter or word with water, and then they'll go back in and then just dab with the brush or with the paint and just let the color or the pigment flow wherever it wants, and it's just so relaxing to watch.
That flow.
So you can have like a little tie-dye effect, some ombre colors going on, and really mix and match and play with your colors if you want to.
I could see where having with practicing a grid on your paper could be nice. I'm seeing my letters all like go off my paper sideways.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to try
Yeah.
this M again since I'm an M name.
I've switched back to the blue now. It's just such a pretty color. I keep going back to it. But yeah, if you feel like if you kind of got some uneven lines, then you can always go back with your brush and touch it up a little bit. In some of my workshops, I noticed that some people are afraid to make sure they have enough water on their brush. And I say that they have dry brush syndrome because then their letters will end up looking really feathered as opposed to like nice and wet. And it just
Mm-hmm.
has this dry look. And so, don't be afraid to add more water to the brush or go back and add more water onto the paper. So, yeah.
So do you have any thoughts for people, with more of like a sketchbook practice, how to maybe integrate more lettering, say, into their sketchbooks or their journals? Or, I mean, I think this time of year I start thinking about letter writing too, just because,
Mm-hmm.
it gets cozy time and we've got the holidays coming up.
Yeah. So this lettering is great for art journaling, for people who are really into bullet journaling and things like that. You can use these letters as like a title for the top of your page. If you have like a word or like a thought or a feeling that you have just kind of been meditating on or reflecting on, then you can use your lettering to write that. Maybe if you've sketched out or drawn or painted like a scenery or something, you want to title it, or give it a name or like a little quote or something, then you can use this lettering for that. As the holidays are approaching, you can definitely use this for addressing envelopes or gift tags, um, or if people are doing something for Thanksgiving and they just want to elevate their Thanksgiving table, you can make some little place cards um, with your brush lettering, with the watercolors or a brush pen or whatever tools you have. So this can be applied to a lot of different things. All right. Do you want to, we can keep going through the alphabet if you like, but if you want to, we can transition to practicing connecting letters to make words, and then we can do our quote.
Let's do that. Yeah, let's move on to a word. I think I'm ready.
Okay. All right. And someone just asked, will you write out a whole word, please? Yes, I will. Maria, what word should I write? Give me a word to practice.
Oh, let's just go for one that I'm want to send the intention out to the whole world of let's just do some peace.
Peace. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do the word peace. So, do you have a pencil with you?
I do.
Okay. So I like to make it easy, and kind of as you said that you notice guidelines would be helpful. So, especially for beginners, I recommend sketching out what you're going to write before going into it. But I'm just going to make a little baseline here. And this baseline is where all of my letters will sit. Okay.
And so if you use a baseline with and then lettering over, is this something you might lightly erase when you're done?
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So you just erase it once the watercolor is completely dry. I can be impatient and I'll try to erase it like around the watercolor while it's still wet, but try to do it erase after it's completely dry and you'll have better results. So
Mm-hmm.
you've got your baseline here. And then if you want to, you can also do like a top line. They call this the ascender line. And then I'm going to draw another little X line here. So this middle line, the X line, is where our lowercase letter will go up to. This top line, the ascender line, is where our uppercase letter will go to, or if we had like a T or an F or something that, you know, kind of goes up a little higher. And then there's another line that can go down here called the descender line, where, you know, like a lowercase a G or a P will go down to, but we'll just keep it simple here.
Okay.
So I'm going to do a capital P. So if you want to just sketch out however you write peace in cursive, and then we'll go over it with our
You're talking to someone who's basically written in all caps. You know, this might be my so I have to reconnect with like my cursive.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny because some calligraphers are, you know, pretty specific. They're like, calligraphy is not cursive. There is a little bit of a difference depending on like the style of lettering that you're going for. But just for, you know, beginners, I'll tell people sometimes, you know, however you write in cursive, just apply the basic rules of the upstrokes and downstrokes just to keep it simple. But there are, you know, some more rules as you get a little bit deeper into intermediate lettering and calligraphy. All right, so I've sketched out our line. Are you still working on yours?
Yeah, but go ahead. I'll okay. I'm using you for some inspiration here.
Sure, go ahead. Someone said that she used dry leaves and a paint pen for Thanksgiving place cards last year. Yeah, that's a fun idea.
All right.
Okay. And again, with the lettering, you know, perfection is not the goal. So you can really be free, and that's what I love about watercolor lettering. Watercolor is really very forgiving and very fluid, and I just like how it lets you kind of be a little bit lax. All right, so I'm
I
going
love
to,
that. So, kind of trust in the brush a little bit.
yeah, kind of rely in your tools a little bit. So I'm going to start tracing over what I wrote. So I'm doing my thin upstroke, thick, heavy downstroke coming down. I'm going to get a little more water on my brush. I'm coming up thin, down thick, and then up thin. And then let's go on to the next letter, the E. I'm coming up thin, down thick, and then up thin. When you're connecting letters to make words, you want to be intentional about leaving a tail at the end of your letter, because that tail is where your next letter is going to connect, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so then, like with letters, like if you're transitioning from an E to an A, I'm going to space where I start out a little bit, and then I'll come up thin. And with my downstroke, I'm going to connect that to my E, come up,
Oh.
down thick, and then back up thin and finish off with the tail.
Oh, that's beautiful. So like instead of me taking my E and going straight into the A, I can start with that coming over
Yeah.
here and going down thick and then joining them together.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It's totally okay to lift your pen off the paper and kind of start and stop in the middle of a word. And I like that, especially as people are getting started, because it allows you to kind of see where your next letter is going, and it helps with spacing your lettering out a little bit.
I feel like if I'm learning one thing, well, two things. One is up thin, down thick. It's to give ourselves permission to slow down. I feel
Oh,
like
yeah.
calligraphy often has such a flow look to it that I feel like it's done sort of quickly, but that it's okay to just go slow.
Yeah, yes. With calligraphy and lettering, you should be moving pretty slowly. Um, as you become, a little bit more well versed, of course, you can speed things up, especially if you have an order of 200 name tags. um, but yes, it's a slow practice. Calligraphy is very intentional. It's relaxing. It's not rushed. It's very therapeutic. Yeah.
It's a lesson I think I need too. Um, the days are full, especially with business and a family, and I often
Hmm.
sketch very quickly when I'm
Yeah.
outside being like, I gotta move, but to take those
Hmm.
deep breaths, and like we all need tools for slowing down and calming down.
Yes.
And this is really wonderful.
Yeah.
You're building
Yeah.
my confidence. I didn't think I could do this at all.
Yeah. See, I told you this was gonna be easy. Well, not that it's like easy, but I got you.
It's accessible. Uh-huh.
It's accessible. Anyone can do this, just with a little time and practice and being intentional. So I just, and this is to the point of really slowing down. I just started something called uh, the calligraphy room, and it's a self-care experience for calligraphers, because kind of like you said, when you have a lot of work to do, and you're just busy doing work for other clients, you can tend to just feel rushed, and you just kind of lose the love of your art. But with the calligraphy room, it's just a place for calligraphers to just have an intentional time set aside for dedicated practice. And so whether you've been doing calligraphy for 2 weeks or 2 years or 20 years, we go through the basic strokes, through the uppercase alphabet, lowercase alphabet, and then finish off with like a self-care quote of the day. And it's just very relaxing and nice to just slow down.
Oh, that's wonderful. I mean, this reminds me that it seems like it's a complement to your physical therapy of
Hmm.
sort of keeping healthy and balanced, that
Oh, yeah.
having this practice.
Yes, it's a nice balance to turn off the medical side of my brain and then just kind of complement it with something creative. All right. So let's do our quote. How are you doing?
I was just fiddling. I was just dropping in some color here.
Yeah, it's fun to experiment with.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to get a sheet of paper. So I think the quote that we were going to do, was it perfection isn't the answer, love is? Or did you have have another quote.
Oh yeah, that's the one I put together. Who was that? Leon.
Joel
I think that's,
Leon.
yeah. Yeah, one of my favorite mantras is practice, not perfection. So when I saw that one, it seemed, complimentary with perfection isn't the answer, love is.
Yes, yes. And it's funny you say that because one of my mantras is perfection is overrated.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, what you're pushing, I think just the acceptance of being a beginner, like it's really wonderful to push ourselves to try new things. And it's easy to stay in our comfort zone, but going out of it can feel good. And it's also, but with going out of that comfort zone, being gentle with ourselves is critical if we want to keep doing it.
All right, so I'm going to switch up my colors a little bit. I have this teal color that I just really, really like. So I'm going to switch over to that. It's with a different palette, so. All right. So first thing that we'll do is sketch out what we're going to write. So if you'd like, you can draw your guidelines, at least the baseline.
Yeah.
So it's probably going to be, let's see, here's perfection.
Perfection.
It's a long word. Perfection isn't the answer. Love is.
Years ago, I had like a book on improving, like practicing your handwriting and cursive. And do you have any kind of favorite books for some exercises or that you recommend for people to check out?
So I'm a very simple and minimal person. I don't have too many like calligraphy books. But there are, and this depends on like the style of lettering that you want to get into. So if you're looking to have a more formal, elegant script, then I know Sarah was on the chat earlier, but she has a whole calligraphy course and like practice guides. Who else has some good guides? Paul Antonio has a manuscript on calligraphy. Let me think, who else? Susan Cunningham, I think that's her name. I don't want to say the wrong thing. If anyone who's watching that is a calligrapher, if you have any favorites, feel free to type it in the chat because they're all blanking my mind right now.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
Yeah. And I don't want to get their names wrong and then people are looking up the wrong person.
Oh, Amanda, I feel like I could spend all day just trying to lay out my notes. I feel like I'm going to try this one more time and then I might just do half of it. So,
yeah.
But I suppose this is where practice, not perfection.
Yeah, just write it out, just a quick sketch, and then we'll just go for it.
Okay.
Yeah, Sarah says she has a book on Amazon called Copperplate Calligraphy from A to Z. So that would be something cool to check out for people who are just getting started. All right. So I'm going to use my smaller brush, and something to keep in mind on trying to decide which brush you want to use when you're lettering out a composition. If your letters are going to be close together, or if it's like a really tight knit quote, then you're going to want to use a small brush. If you're doing like a full page, the letters are really spaced out, then you can use a bigger brush. Otherwise, if you use a big brush and you're writing small letters, it's going to look all clumped together. So that'll be something to help. Oh, JoJo's on here. She said Cricut Calligraphy has a ton of resources. Yeah, she has a couple courses out for helping people getting started with calligraphy. The Happy Ever Crafter, she has like a free basic strokes kind of program for people getting started, and I think that's free if you're just wanting to dive into lettering and you want to practice basic strokes.
Oh, very cool. Oh, I love that color you're using.
I love it. This is the same color I used for that piece that I sent you.
I know, I recognize it.
It's kind of like my go-to. I think because for me the color is just like really calming. And so I tend to always go back to this green. All right. So as I'm doing these letters and as you're doing yours, we're just doing these thick downstrokes as you come down, thin light strokes as you come up. And reminders, especially for people that are just getting started, to not focus on having all the movement just in your fingers, but to keep a light hand and use your whole arm to create the movement. And that way your hand doesn't get so tired.
Oh, good tip. Oh, you've got such nice flow.
Thank you. And I'll say one thing about these smaller brushes is they don't hold as much water. So I have to kind of re-dip pretty often in order to keep the flow going pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
But comes with the territory, right?
Do you have a favorite quote right now? Or you mentioned one of your mantras of around perfection.
Oh yeah, perfection is overrated.
Uh-huh.
Let me see. I have a few favorite quotes. A quote that I have like since I was young, and I don't know, it just came upon me pretty randomly, is to never settle for less than the best. That's a quote that I love. Another one is, life is too short to not be doing things that bring you happiness or joy. And that just reminds me that if you're, like in a situation, or, kind of doing something that, or involved in something that, is not really ideal, if you have the opportunity to change your situation or your circumstances, then why would you stay in that negative space? So it's just a reminder to seek the things that serve you well, bring you peace, and give you joy, as opposed to sticking to things that keep you with like a negative energy or stressed out and things like that. So I love that quote too.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I've got a few. Something I repeat to myself often is trust in process. And just thinking like, if I can have a process for something, to just trust in that, like trust in practicing something. Or when I have a hard time starting, like say making art, if I trust, if I get out my supplies and start making some marks,
right,
you'll get into the flow. So I always tell myself, just trust in process.
That's what I have to
Um,
tell myself if I want to work out. Like, just put your workout clothes on, and then the rest will come.
right, attainable goals. Your goal can just be to put
Yeah,
your workout clothes on.
yeah. Start with that, and then you'll move on to the gym.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have any classes coming up?
I do. I haven't announced this one yet, but I'm going to do one more like beginners class for the year in December. It's going to be a brush lettering class, actually. It won't be like watercolor, but it'll be with like a brush pen. Let me see what the date is. Let's see. It's going to be on Saturday, December 12th.
Oh,
I haven't,
awesome.
yeah, it'll be like a Saturday morning class, or mid-morning class. So
And
I
people
haven't,
can find link to your website, or when it's available, it'll be on your website for registering.
yes, yes, ma'am. It'll be on my website and I'll post it on my social media pages as well.
Awesome. We'll look out for that.
Yeah.
Do you have any other projects coming up?
Let's see. I feel like I always have a ton of projects ongoing. um, Today I delivered a couple of letter jackets to a client. I'm working with a company to kind of put out some new products for like with my lettering designs on them. So I'm kind of excited about that. I can't share too many details quite yet because they haven't released it yet. Um, but yeah, my goal for 2020 is to have, you know, some more courses, like beginner courses, because a lot of people really ask about that. They're like, oh, when are you going to teach another brush lettering class or modern calligraphy? So working on putting that schedule together for 2021.
Awesome. Well, keep us posted so we can help let people know.
Sure,
And
definitely will.
we have a little calligraphy project coming out soon. So I hope
Ooh,
everyone who might be interested can stay tuned. I'll give you a little hint. It's going to be in a little tiny palette with 4 colors. And I think if all goes well, we'll be announcing them next week. So our newsletter is the best place to hear about that. And Amanda, I'll be sure to send one your way to play with.
I'm excited about it. I can't wait.
Yeah. And I know we're just about out of time, so we might have to, maybe you can post a photo of the final quote
The final,
there. I
yeah,
had such
I can
a
do that.
awesome. Amanda, I just really want to thank you so much for taking time to paint and practice and share your work with me and everybody else. I really appreciate your kind and supportive and
Aw.
patient and creative approach to this lettering. It's a lot of fun.
Yes, I enjoy it, and I'm grateful to you for inviting me to do this live demonstration and just kind of chat with you and everyone joining along. So I'm grateful.
Real pleasure. Well, I look forward to following and all the other endeavors that you do, and hope you and everybody else enjoy the rest of your day.
Awesome.
All right, we'll talk to you later.
All righty. Bye.